Hello, listeners, and welcome to a Geek Tragedy podcast. It's warm. That's it.
That's the whole intro. It's
Too
warm.
So if you're listening to this in the winter, it's summer now. I'm Stephen, known online as Plague Mantle for various reasons, and I am your host, your warm host. I would like to welcome to the pod, as ever, the most erudite human and my best friend, Holly Properly. Hey, Holly, how are you?
Hi, it's warm.
I hadn't noticed. I wasn't going to bring it up.
Oh, were you not?
No.
Okay.
So it's just warm.
Yep, it's warm. No brain.
It's going to be the best pod ever.
It's too humid for brain.
Too humid for brain. And that is the statement of the pod. And of course, our very own salvage man and crafter par excellence, Mark Cordory. How are you, Mark?
I'm moist. Thank you very much. From the heat. Holly,
And there goes half our audience.
Oh,
it's hot down here too.
Hot down where?
Down here, down in Cornwall.
Oh, right, I thought you were moist down there places, but
No, Stephen.
moving on.
A minute and 20 seconds.
At least you haven't talked about greased leopards yet. Anyway, carry on, Stephen.
It's on the programme, I'm sure. But we should also say a great thanks to our behind-the-scenes producer and long-suffering Kit, who is always known as Kit. But today, Holly has underlined the fact that they are an excellent kit, or a special kit, or a wonderful kit. I can't remember which kind of kit it was now.
Best kit.
Best kit. There we are. Best kit today. Not sure why. What was today's reason for Kit being the best kit?
Kit's just the best kit.
Right.
That's the only reason I've got.
Kit, not just best kit.
No, the best kit.
I see. That's quite
Ethics kit.
Jesus Christ. Okay. So you're new to the pod, so I'm so sorry. I'm not. It's warm. At the moment, we are on a roll of talking about the movement of different literature through various forms of media, which is pretty interesting, I have to say. It's been quite a lot of fun talking about it. For me, I still think that discussing The Shadow was probably my highlight so far. But I think what to talk about today is going to be pretty cool. I think it's going to be quite cool because we're on a bit of a different tack. And I should probably lead the leopard to its greasing area, so that we can catch up on where it's been.
You can lead a leopard to grease.
But you can't clean it off afterwards. Sorry, this is going to become a thing. So last episode, we had locked our ex-foils in attack position to engage our intellectual prowess in the battle of against the Grand Moff of sci-fi film Star Wars. And this week, we will be staying on target as we move into a slightly different approach vector. Anyway, basically, we're going to be talking...
You're really crowbarring those in.
Yes, I am.
Galaxy!
I'm
crowbarring those in, you are.
We're going to be talking about it in a different way. So we did like a lot of talking about the films and so forth, and their origins as we perceive them to be. But this time we're going to go in a different way. And it's probably going to take us into different areas of fandom, because we're going to talk a little bit about things like Lord of the Rings and other films, which we're going to say the subject of our pod today was probably driven a little bit by Star Wars. So we're going to do that because we can, and it's our podcast, and we'll do what we want to.
Nobody can stop us.
Well, maybe Kit.
Yeah,
Kit could definitely stop us.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised that Kit hasn't stopped us already, if I'm honest.
Maybe he's fallen asleep in the heat.
Maybe.
Anyway, enough of this bollocks. Let's talk Space Turkey. Fortunately, I'm not as easily swayed by Kit appearing randomly in the pod. So we're going to talk about the music that made the film. So at the end of the last pod, we talked about how the tabletop role-playing game and the books that followed defined a lot of the lore in the current universe, the one that we're kind of, we're falling into today. And there's new Star Wars stuff out all the time. It's dividing opinion on whether it's any good or not. I'm the Acolytes just come out, and I keep seeing people going,
How do you spell that?
You don't.
Right.
You just make the noise.
Okay, I don't think I could make that noise. I
And then
don't have enough jowls.
If you were writing it down, it would be Stephen made an unusual noise that sounded a bit like a horse
A Lovecraftian summoning chant.
doing
Horse.
Well, I was going to say doing something, but Marcus filled that in for me, doing a Lovecraftian summoning chant. So if you ever hear a horse going, you know exactly what it's doing, and to move away from the area with speed.
Or to call a vet.
Not with a drug speed, because the horse probably doesn't have any of that. But
it's doing a bad Winston Churchill impression.
Right. Stay on target.
Okay, you're doing it now as well.
I know.
I can't remember what I was saying. But so yes, the acolyte, which so we'll still get to the books, but we'll do that next pod probably, because this is going to be several prongs of attack, talking about music, and that we might end up definitely talking about the phenomena that Star Wars kind of kicked off, and I'm fine with that. Because I want to talk to you guys about how Star Wars set a precedent in the late 1970s that became, a practically John Williams fueled phenomena for decades to come. And, we're going to talk about the fandom of music. And before the pod, we were just kind of chatting about kind of the differences between kind of show or films with individual songs, or films that had that much more kind of leitmotif kind of stuff. And I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So just have interest. Do you guys know what the first fandom was? The first scribed down fandom ever was? Unless you've read the all through.
Jesus.
No, the very first fandom that we recognised. Oh, Jesus. Because he does have his own theme tune. Is that right?
I don't know. It's warm.
You're the cataholic.
I'm a lapsed cataholic. Thank you very much. I've only got one cat.
So we're not sure if that was his theme tune or their theme tune. But the first fandom that's recognised is Sherlock Holmes. And it's recognised because there were, like, obviously when Sherlock Holmes was killed off, I don't know if you noticed, but there was actually public mourning went on the first time he was killed, and there were demonstrations about, like, fucking bring him back, you bastards. And people went on to create their first fans fiction, which sort of happened in like 1897 or so. Anyway, so just a random globule of knowledge there.
A globule of knowledge.
Yes, it's
I love that.
That's provided by a horse on speed. But yes, in 1977, cinemas everywhere heralding a new era as Star Wars main title majestically strolled out of cinemas and onto the streets, with people wandering around straight out of the cinemas, being the big title theme, and running around the playgrounds shouting it out to the
you couldn't move in the late 70s for teenagers humming.
Yeah. Ba 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 ba. That was the way forward. Yeah, and I had a little scroll through the internet today, which is always the most reliable source of information in the entire universe. But generally, the consensus was, if you ask the question, what is the most recognizable movie music, about 74% apparently of people will say Star Wars. So it's that's pretty good. But we were going to discuss, like, do we think it is the first kind of like big noticeable music, that kind of like stuck to a genre, or I should say a fandom, really?
I mean, Jaws has got to be in there as one of the
inspired
recognizable. Mm-hmm. Well, same composer. I think maybe, what about 2001 Space Odyssey? I mean, that was an existing piece of music, the Blue Danube, but that became very much attached to that film, and thus spoke this I can't pronounce it, but there's another piece of classical music that goes with 2001 Space Odyssey. So that had some very recognizable pieces of music, probably Good, Bad and the Ugly as well.
We said James Bond, didn't we?
James Bond, yeah, I mean, absolutely. If we're talking movies, and I'll probably leave this one till you start talking about something else that I know that you're going to lead into, but there's a character theme piece of music which I know about.
So this is a leitmotif thing again, yeah?
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that in a minute. Go on, Beans, what you got to say?
It was Thus Spake Zarathustra, which
Thank you very
Mark was
much.
thinking of.
Yeah, that's why I didn't
As soon
try
as
and pronounce it.
as soon as you said the word "spake," I was like, I know exactly what you're thinking about, but it
Is that
took me a
Jizz's
minute.
theme tune?
No, Thus Spake Zarathustra is a piece of music. I think it's also a quote from something, but I can't quite remember. It's warm, and my brain doesn't work.
It is warm. I'm definitely a bit of a spec down.
But no, there you go. It was Blue Danube and Thus Spake Zarathustra.
Go the knowledgeable ones. So, like, yeah, absolutely, Jaws was the inspiration certainly behind Lucas's desire for this whole kind of big orchestra of music. The classical composers like Steiner and Korngold. But like, I guess over the next 5 decades, 6 decades, loads of big fandoms had of stuff like the Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and the rest of it all had this one design of music that ran all the way through it. So that flowed off of that. Do we think that all came from Star Wars? Do you think that was definitely the first?
I think the big orchestra was definitely propelled by Star Wars, but I don't think it was exclusive to Star Wars, and I don't think Star Wars really started it. But yeah, I mean, it was probably the first time in our generation that we heard big orchestras going, here's the music to your film. Sit back, relax, and let it flow over you, rather than like a little ditty.
I mean, I think it might have been one of the first in sort of theatrical film release for certain, but that whole idea of putting on of music that represents characters, that represents good and evil, that represents specific places, that goes back, that's a very prevalent theme in opera. It's also, I mean, you only have to really look at sort of things like Peter and the Wolf.
Wagner's operas particularly were it all kind of
Wagner was big up on that. But it's again, it's quite interesting because it is that translation from medium to medium, and you could say that there's theoretically very little between stage and screen, like things bounce back and forward between stage and screen all the time. Like, I learned just yesterday, for example, that my favorite film in the whole world, one of my favorite films in the whole world, Disney's Hercules from 1997, is now going to be on the West End, and I'm very excited about that, and that will translate very well to theatre, and I will probably see it about 12 times. But it's that there is definitely kind of that idea of music being able to imprint emotion into an audience better than speech is clear throughout kind of basically throughout
our association
theatrical history
of music with a character or a piece, and that's really good for us to be able to talk about how when Mark was saying everyone running around the playground, well, you can move people doing Star Wars tunes, but when we were actually playing characters in the playground, being kids, you would put your own music on, wouldn't you? And it'd be running through your head, because you like Luke Skywalker music.
It just occurred to me, there's a whole genre of movies which totally predates any of this, which absolutely had character themed songs for specific characters, musicals like South Pacific, My Fair Lady, all of those, Camelot, that all of those had specifically written songs, generally with the actor bursting into song.
The step we're talking about though is like how Star Wars, for me personally, think in my brain, kicked off the whole next generation of putting that. We're not just going to do one opera in one. It's going to be 80 films worth of opera, and all of that music is going to translate through all of the different films and TV shows and whenever. Obviously, every single movie rather has begun with the role and then the Star Wars opening theme, but you'll be in an episode of The Mandalorian, and the Obi-Wan Kenobi music will play somewhere or whatever, and you'll be like, and you'll think of him. He'll come into your mind because it's kind of don't dismiss it. Don't dismiss it, you old fart.
Mark made a face if you're not watching.
And then giggled when I called him an old fart.
Like an old fart.
But yes, so I mean that's kind of for me what I'm talking about when we say kind of it kicks off this whole, kind of driven idea of all we can cross across all these films, and later on we'll go on and talk about how like what you said beforehand, having the sellable product, from Star Wars that kind of came about that moves into other things, and that's the music helps that sort of thing as well. But that's one question that took us like a whole 9 minutes to answer. And there's 32 questions, so
I'm bedding in. We're going to be here for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the only other one was like the next one, which moved into it, we haven't really talked about other than before the pod. Mark did a strange doop 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 doop. We were like, "What the fuck is that?" And you were the good, the bad, and the ugly. Do you want to do it again?
No, because it was appallingly awful first time round. I'm not going to do it on a public format. You just have to guess.
Is that because I thought it was Hawaii 5-0?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah.
At least you
I think
had
that's
a guess.
because I'm wearing the Hawaiian shirt.
That'll be it. But those we think about that. But a lot of the whole Western concept, is Star Wars a Western. I looked this up beforehand. There's the famous title music for Star Wars uses many characteristics found the famous Western scores, such as the Big Country or the Magnificent Seven, including a chord sequence known by musical theorists as the cowboy half cadence. There you go.
Can you give us a demonstration of that, Stephen?
Yeah. That's it.
Cool. I can see why
That's the horse does it after too much speed and a Necronomicon inspired bell.
It's warm.
It is warm.
Like a Terry Pratchett troll. Our brains slow down in the heat.
So the next question was, I kind of went to pause it, was, is it in fact the Force, right? So when, I don't think obviously Lucas intended to do this, but to me, the way the music operates, it's like the Force is manipulating the way we perceive the story, right? So like it's the core theme of Star Wars, right? One of the core themes is the Force, yeah? Why are you giggling away there, Beans?
Because you sound like my GCSE English teacher when we were doing Return of the Native, which is a Thomas Hardy novel in which the landscape is very prevalent as a character. It's the same in Wuthering Heights. Landscape is very prevalent as kind of is characterized in a lot of novels from the 1800s. And my English teacher, when I was doing my GCSEs, was very, very hot on this subject of like how is this author making this landscape, like living? How is it another character? And I was like, well, it's literally just describing a landscape. Like, he's putting the characters in context. And I feel the same about Star Wars. I feel like it's adding context to the characters in that part of our brain that processes emotion through sound rather than speech.
Yes, I was getting on to say that.
Okay.
I mean, has anybody who's gone through heartbreak, like a piece of music will evoke emotions, really strong emotions. Music works the same in films.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say
evoke emotions.
Anyone that's gone through heartbreak, I thought you were going to say, it's always the Imperial March, isn't it? I thought you were going to go with it. Like, oh my God, they left me. Dun, 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 dun. And there you go. There he is, the Imperial March, and the cat has appeared.
The Imperial March has summoned Sully.
Look at him, he's evil.
Is it a bit warm for you today?
Well, he is made of coat.
He's so fluffy.
So anyway, back to what you were saying after we dissed your theory.
I wasn't dissing it. I was agreeing with it.
No, it was making it for me, because I was going to go on to say it underpins important moments of the films, allowing us to hear the heroism of Skywalker or, the menace of Darth Vader. It kind of brings across the excitement of the attacks that are going on, that kind of stuff, when they're doing the Death Star or love scenes between Leia and Solo. But just what I said earlier about Obi-Wan being in shows. So like at the end of Empire, right, when they're belting about Cloud City, and Luke turns up, and there's a lot of kind of connotation of Yoda earlier has done that whole kind of like, you just read this whole like the past, the future. But I can't do it. Why can't I do a good Yoda today? It's terrible.
Maybe it's too warm for Yoda.
Well,
It's not
just that,
swampy. Oh, it's quite
you must
swampy,
see
actually.
other places, that kind of stuff. And then Luke's reaching out to Leia, and it's all Yoda's music that's playing. So in the background of all those scenes, they're bringing him to life, even though he's not there. They're telling his story, which I think is really. I remember being there as a kid and watching it and kind of going, "It's Yoda's music. This means, is he going to turn up? Is he going to just like kind of?" But no, it was just kind of demonstrating the arc of the story going in that direction.
I had a really when I knew we were discussing this for this episode, I had a thought. What would it be like to watch, say, the original 3 films with no music soundtrack?
Oh my God! Have you not seen? So there's a big, the ceremony in the New Hope, where they get the medals.
Oh yeah, I have seen that, and it all just looks incredibly awkward.
Well, it's just because
they're just looking at each other.
Chewbacca screams. It's like ah! It's not Chewbacca. It's just the actor screaming, and everyone kind of turns, and then it's just like no music. It's just so weird.
That's the thing, isn't it? Like music raises that whole willing suspension of disbelief kind of thing.
I think it kind of tells you what you're meant to be feeling.
Well, it does tell you what you're meant to be feeling, definitely, but it's also there to kind of to just sort of smooth over the bits of like no, you're not going to listen to like footsteps and like if you've got like thousands of stormtroopers in a shot, one of them's going to be sneezing, one of them's going to be coughing, one of them's going to be farting at least, right?
Well, it's like old Doctor Who, isn't it?
Yeah.
The 60s, 70s Doctor Who didn't have instrumental music. It just had them wandering around, and in the background there'd be unit soldiers going.
But you put music,
that kind of stuff.
You layer it with music, and suddenly like you can't hear them. You can hear the important stuff, and you get that really evocative kind of. This is what I'm supposed to be feeling right now. This is I think it works. I don't think it works right on me though, because basically any piece of orchestral music in the whole world, if it is played like like without the film, so if you played me like a piece of music from Lord of the Rings, if you played me a piece of music from Star Wars, anything like that, it basically nearly always makes me cry, no matter what it is. I'm just like, oh, this is so beautiful.
No, but I think that's good though, right?
But it certainly means that I have emotion.
Because like I would agree that like I would not be like I'm an emotional person too, as we both know. We'll often sit and watch a film, and you'll go first, and I'll be not far behind you, right?
Oh, I'm in tears
too.
the first I'm always.
The music is the vehicle that gets me there, because
Yes.
it covers up like quite often. We're watching something like there's a lot of stuff in like Doctor Who, for example, in the new Doctor Who stuff that makes me quite emotional when stuff's going on. But I often think like these guys can't act. But the music just carries you through that point, and you're really sucked over the story. But so yeah, I don't think you're doing it wrong, Holly.
Okay, well, it feels like I'm doing it because everything makes me cry. Just everything, just literally everything.
Well,
but no, I think
in touch with the emotions.
I think that maybe a little bit too in touch.
I think it's fine.
Okay, but like I think honestly, I think and it's someone's probably done it somewhere at some kind of experimental film festival and done a movie that doesn't have any music in it at all, and it's probably very uncomfortable, and it's probably not as watchable. It's probably not as gripping. It probably doesn't have kind of like all of the elements of catharsis that you'd expect to come out of a movie, because pure acting alone, like even like play, like just regular plays will often have like elements of music in them at particularly kind of cathartic moments, because that's kind of how like you said, how people know what to feel and when to feel it.
Another interesting thought that you've just triggered in me is I wonder what proportion of, let's take the original Star Wars, I wonder what proportion of that film has a musical backtrack to it, and how much of it is just the sound of whatever's happening in the scene.
I'm going to see if
It's-
Google knows that answer,
it
because
might
that would
do.
be very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched that film a bajillion times now. I think about. I mean, I'm pretty certain a lot of it. You know, every time they do the sideways scroll, you know, it changes scene. You know, it'll be like Tatooine to a TIE fighter rumbling through space, and they like do this the thing. There's always that introductory, you know, kind of like, this is the Empire now, music, and then kind of look, some droids on a hill. You know, they got that kind of different. But that's it, isn't it? It's just the pace of music.
That would be such a great musical. Look at these droids on a hill.
But that's the concept, right? So if you're not watching the screen at the time, you hear the change in music, and you know that like which character on screen. That's the force through music at work, right? So, but I'm absolutely certain that when there's scenes where Vader is wandering around the big table, for example, you know, kind of, I find your lack of faith disturbing. I'm pretty certain there's no music in that. Even because I remember when he's doing
there must be scenes.
Yeah, so when he's force choking that dude, and he's like, and they've got the heart, boom, boom, heartbeat. There's no music in the background of that. I'm pretty certain. For example, you know, there's not like a bunch of guys in the background going doo 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 as Vader chokes the life out of someone. Yeah, was that the Jesus music again? I've forgotten. Or the Jesus, if it is in the cantina. For those who weren't here last time, we find that obviously Lucas named the only brand of music that existed at the time in Star Wars Jizz, because that's what you call space jazz. Idiot. Well, it's warm.
It is warm.
But yeah, so no, I don't think it goes on continuously. But then it doesn't generally, does it? You know, there aren't shows that I can think of. I mean, Doctor Who, a good example. Like, there's a lot of bits in that with just talking, but then when the Doctor runs off to do something, his tune picks up. You know, or if it's the main sidekick of their companion, sorry, then you know their music will kick off if they're doing something. But they're just standing around, you know, I don't know, burning a pig or something. Then you know you don't have. Well, casual actions, you know, casual normal stuff. If they're like doing something daring, like drawing a house, then there's already action music. But if they're burning a pig or you know exploding a house of monkeys, then there's no music at all.
It's warm. We do not advocate exploding houses of monkeys.
But yeah, so I think the agreement. Well, I say we're agreement. I always say this. I think we're all agreed, even though you guys have made like completely different points to me. I'm like, we're all agreed that what I said was right.
Yes, teacher.
And to be honest, I can't remember what I was talking about now. So whatever it was correct. But the concept of how the music guides us through the film, I think that is the force, right? It guides. That's the core concept. One of the core concepts of the shows, and somehow the music has become that kind of same driving factor, and that's kind of cool. I like the synergy between that, the way that developed. I really do appreciate the fact that the music talks to us all the way through 5 decades worth of shows. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's iconic, isn't it? You know,
that is the word.
I love the word iconic. It's great to say.
And it brings our togetherness as fans, kind of into a good perspective, because we are. I mean, we're going to talk about fandom in a minute. We are definitely going to talk about fandom, but we've touched on that whole kind of way that when the films come out, that new music was important. But I remember when when Clone Wars came out, and I was so keen for the music to play again, the hairs in the back of my neck stand up, because it was the first new film, and you're expecting this kind of, it's going to be the same kind of music. But afterwards, that's what we talked about. We talked about the Duel of the Fates, ba 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 bum 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 bum, and that tremendously amazing lightsaber fight that went on between Darth Maul and the Jedi's of Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan, and that was really cool, and the music was just as good as the stuff that we'd remember, just as good as the Imperial March, just as good as it was amazing, right? And that I remember coming out of the cinema, and that was mostly what we talked about. Everyone could remember the music, and everyone was like that, and that was great. I loved it. It was incredible. The film wasn't as good as perhaps I might have wanted it to be, but then, as we've discussed before, I was seeing that through the eyes of someone who was 20 years older than he had been when he watched the first one. So, yeah. So, what do you guys think? I mean, was it the same for you guys?
Yeah, it's good theme music. Yeah, like it.
Thanks,
I think
Mark.
I think obviously I missed the first round, because I'm not that old. But for me, I think it comes with the fact that music from Star Wars is universal now. It is almost universally recognized, and
You go to football fans and it being played at the start of the.
yeah, I mean, like it's played at the start of football matches. It's referenced as being DC Peter Grant's ringtone in the Imperial March is his ringtone in the Rivers of London series, and he references having to turn it off while he's telling someone that so like someone was murdered in supernatural circumstances because he didn't think it would be fitting.
And that's a really good example of bringing the fandom together, because when we read that, we are all like kind of,
Yeah,
that someone else out there is reading that and doing the same little jig you are.
it's Star Wars. I know Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's that I think, and I think kind of when things like that become universal, it really helps to bring, like, it can really do that. It can really sort of bring people together, whether that's just because like they love Star Wars, or because they really appreciate like the actual music itself, or just because they're using it as a ringtone or whatever. It's it it's a it's a signifier that you are a person that like likes the same things as the like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you know
You're reading. You're in your example. You're reading a geeky book about nothing to do with Star Wars, and then Star Wars pops up in it, and those links
Yeah.
now link you with another reader of that geeky book, even though it's got nothing to do with the Star Wars universe, and that's cool.
Yeah.
And when you watch football, I know Mark loves football, um, and it's there at the beginning of matches. They play. I don't know if you know that, Mark, but they play before a football match begins. They play Duel of the Fates at many stadiums around at least this country.
Oh, good old kickball.
Yeah, and you're like, as Holly and I like football, but like you're watching it. The first time they started playing, they're like, what are they doing? Why are they playing Star Wars at the start of this football game? What the fuck is this about? And there's loads of fans. And you're like, you don't even know what that is, do you? But they probably do, because Star Wars is so big.
Well, that's the thing as well, right? Like again, Star Wars feels like it has that sort of that universal, like that universal feel, because I can talk to, like my parents, not particularly geeky people. I can talk to them about Star Wars.
Last week you told us they reenacted Star Wars
They
through
did,
lockdown
but
in
that
their
is
underpants.
probably the geekiest thing that like in terms of what I like
What
my
was
geekiness.
quite interesting, what happened in your household after that?
I mean, like my mum also loves Doctor Who, and has loved Doctor Who from the very beginning.
Mark's been in Doctor
Who.
Mark is Doctor Who.
Ah, interesting. But
We'll just keep raising the odds until he says something.
There's
Not rising to it.
it's too hot. It's too hot to rise to it. But that there is that sort of, if you can't connect, or if you're finding it difficult to connect with somebody on, like one level or another, you can generally connect with people on Star Wars, like, or yeah, exactly, and Lego as well is also there.
Yeah. So I don't know. When you were at school, Mark, and you were saying like you are probably the only one of us that remembers coming out the cinema like when Star Wars first came out. Yeah.
Yep, I saw it when it was originally released. The very
So
first one.
I saw it was really released, but I was just about 3 years old, so I memories
I was
of it.
16.
Yeah, so you probably remember walking out and talking to people more than I do. What was it like? I mean, did people talk about the music and stuff? Was it? I don't know what you discussed after you watched the film.
Well, no, you weren't there.
I don't know. I think obviously the music stuck with us because it's a very They're all very catchy themes. They're not complex really. They're very easily defined themes. But I mean, obviously the main thing we were talking about was the special effects. So it was the visuals which captured us, and I don't really recollect the music much. Although I do remember having a cassette tape for Christmas which had all the music from Star Wars on it. Only it wasn't it wasn't music from the film. It was just some cheap ass small band which had just played all of this music, and it was like incredibly disappointing because it wasn't a full Philharmonic orchestra. It was probably 5 people in a recording
Garage?
studio. Yeah, it sounded like it.
Do you remember the disco version?
Oh fuck yeah!
Disco
yeah.
Star Wars.
I just remember that in like 1980-81 they had this. And
okay, you do any more bars of that, and like the sound is getting cut off by the
yeah,
mouse.
but obviously I can't sing. But you get the concept. That it was all like they had this like pop-in disco version of Star Wars. Now that I remember it,
I have to find that and listen to
yeah,
that
I forgot about
immediately.
Don't save your, please, Holly. We care for you. Please don't do it.
I can't believe all the disco people together.
You see, but then again,
Yeah,
there you go. You see, you're connecting more people with Star Wars. It is
Disco
the
is not
link.
dead. Disco is life.
But like, I mean, that's that's incredible, isn't it? And it's often quite sad because I mean, nobody can be sad when Stephen's like disco dancing in the background, but like because I always find that like things like that sound and sound effects and the way that things are kind of all put together often plays like, without meaning to be too punny, but often plays second fiddle to the visuals. Like Mark said, you'll come out of a film and you'll talk about kind of all of the amazing effects, and you'll talk about like all of the visuals and all of those things. And I think that sound design and music design,
different
and
cinemas now, though.
composition. Well, yeah, but I mean, like tell me.
Music really lifts you out of your seat nowadays.
Well, yeah, exactly, and I don't
it
like
does.
it.
It does, but I also think it's a subconscious thing. Musical will be a subconscious thing that you take away with you. I mean, the visuals are very easy to go, "Ooh, that scene was great," and that scene was great. But in the back of your head, maybe you're just constantly replaying clips of the theme.
I have the Hobbit
Well, it's more
music
than
in
that
my
now,
head
isn't it?
most days.
We add them to our playlists now, so we wouldn't. There's a lot of music from films on my playlist, and there are in fact entire playlists of film music depending on what I'm doing with my life. If I want to play them. Back in the old days, we'd have made mixtapes, but we wouldn't have probably made a Star Wars mixtape. You just went out and bought the Star Wars music made by a crap band in a garage. But nowadays, you just put them in where you want to, and you can play them. When I first wrote The Rise of the Chaos, the LARP that we do back in the 90s. It was just about when the Duel of the Fates had come out, so 2000 maybe, whatever. And I sat and I was doing one version of that, and that's all I listened to for ages because it was on a CD, I think. Maybe I can't remember. But yeah,
well,
exactly.
And as well, you kind of like, I think for you and me in particular, Stephen, like music, the dopamine that you can get out of music is really helpful for doing things, so like if I need to do something, I am not a person that has music on a lot. I listen to music when I'm in my car, and I listen to music if I need to clean my house or do a chore that I don't really want to do. Otherwise, I much prefer to not be listening to anything, because that's the way that my brain is wired, and it's wired weirdly, and I'm aware of that. But if I need to get something done, then I will put on something that is kind of driving, that is like the Star Wars soundtrack. If I want to do something that's kind of like maybe less vital, I'll listen to the Hobbit song over and over and over and over again because it makes me happy and it fills me with joy. And if I'm feeling really adventurous, then I'll listen to the Blues Brothers soundtrack because everyone knows that is the best soundtrack of any movie that has ever existed, ever, with the possible exception of 1997's Disney's Hercules.
And Transformers the movie from 1986. But
We should
anyway,
make a list.
moving on, because we've done 40 minutes about we're not halfway through section 1 yet. I blame
Watch
Mark.
us
Yeah,
go.
shut up. But we're going to talk about things that's gone on to inspire. So we want to talk about some other bits and pieces. The echoes of Star Wars, as we've alluded to. I don't know where that came from. I switched that bit off. Hello, the echoes of Star Wars. Who is that?
It's warm.
It is warm. Anyway, this association music expands like lots of fandoms, and it can be felt for the next bunch of decades of films, right? So Harrison Ford himself, the great Han Solo, would go on to star in Indiana Jones, yeah, and like I don't know how you guys feel about this, but just because the films, obviously when they came out, were standalone, effectively free standalone films until later on some stuff happened. But whenever the theme tune would pick up, you'd hear it. That was another hairs in the back of your neck moment, because Indiana Jones is about to kick off. That was great.
In the same way as the James Bond theme as well.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain pieces of music which do just go, ooh, here we go. The Mission Impossible theme as well. That's another one.
Mm-hmm.
There are, I totally agree. I think the Indiana Jones theme is another one of those beautifully iconic pieces of music which just evoke adventure and excitement.
It is.
The adrenaline going.
That's exactly what it is. And I love Indiana Jones. I love Indiana Jones possibly maybe a little bit more than I love Star Wars, but I don't know. I can't quite tell. But I remember like all of the music from Indiana Jones has that kind of that feel running through it of like characters, of mood, of location. And it also introduced me in the Temple of Doom to I didn't realize, because I watched Indiana Jones when I was quite young, because again my mum loves Indiana Jones. I watched it when I was quite young, and for years I didn't realize that Anything Goes was actually a song in English. I thought it was I genuinely thought it was Chinese for a really long time. And I used to try and sing along, and it did not go well. But yeah, and that again is iconic. Every time I hear that song, I think of Indiana Jones and Willie Scott.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's what.
And what a bad idea it is to put your girlfriend in a film if you're the director.
She could not act.
She could not. And was never in anything else ever again.
No, but it was fun. It was a lark for all concerned. But there is that, you can bring look at, I know it's not film, but look at Stranger Things and Kate Bush. Look at what like there is an entire generation of people now who, when they hear that song, they think of Stranger Things. There's an entire generation of people that when they hear Anything Goes, they think of Indiana Jones. Like, you can, like, those associations, even with music that has already existed, that isn't created specifically for that genre or for that piece of, like, for that visual piece, it creates that connection. And I think
Reservoir Dogs is another one.
Yeah, music builds connection in your brain. I genuinely believe that music is that's what music is for.
So, because we don't like to shut Holly up, Mark and I are just here to shush. Mark and I are just here to be the pretty faces of the show. While Holly does all the talking, I'm going to move that straight into Lord of the Rings, because, like, I'm sure both of you got a lot to say about this. Because this is what you wanted to talk about, wasn't it, Mark? I think.
No, this is what Holly wanted to talk about.
I know it's a bit that Holly wants to talk about as well, but like, if you talk about, so Star Wars was written to be a film, yeah, and it became so much more. Whereas Lord of the Rings, obviously, and everything to do with that universe, was written to be a bedtime story and effectively turned into the books that we know and love. And then, as we'll discuss another day when we talk about Lord of the Rings and its wonderful radio plays and half-finished cartoon / live action films, and then on into the actual movies themselves. we want to talk about how, in that case, so like Star Wars' music defines this thing that came from the films, whereas for us, for me, and I think for Holly, I'm not sure about Mark, the concept of the end product being the music, which then describes everything that encapsulates that kind of universe. So like it covers the books, it covers the films, it covers the radio plays, because when you hear the music now, that's what, when I read the books now, that's what I hear in my head.
Mhm.
Which, you know, Star Wars did. I think Star Wars was the lesson that things like Lord of the Rings learned from when they wrote that. I'm absolutely positive they were like, we want this to speak to everything in the Lord of the Rings universe. We want to speak to the books. We want to speak to the radio plays. We want to speak to everything. That's what I think anyway.
I wonder if it's harder to do it in that order, because with Star Wars you can build you could build the characters, the location, the feeling, the emotion, and the music all together. There's nothing pre-existing for you to kind of have to take into account. But if you're looking at a film script for something that was a book, and you've already got a fan base and you've already got people that have, I mean, there are scholars who have dedicated like thousands of hours of research into the thematics of Lord of the Rings, the semantics, like all of the
And then there's us doing a podcast.
all of the linguistics in it. It's a fascinating, like, it just
Yeah, no,
I
it's a good point, because I understand. I'm sorry, you carry on, because I don't.
know
I
I
don't want
lost
to
all of my
mansplain what
words.
Go, Mark.
Well,
I got too excited.
what I was reading from that was he was saying that when Star Wars came, it was a blank canvas. Everything arrived in one go. Yeah, there was no pre-existing concept or visualization, or there was nothing before Star Wars came as a complete package. Whereas Lord of the Rings, as you were so rightly saying, that there's all this pre-existing mental imagery, everything about it has been explored so heavily. And how do you put music to that?
Yeah,
You fit it in retrospectively into an existing product, and
There
that
you go.
must be more difficult.
Mark being the Holly whisperer there.
yeah, that is exactly what I meant. But I just got very excited and all of the words bounced out of my head.
So I wasn't trying to mansplain. I
No,
promise.
you absolutely were not doing that in any way, shape, or form. No,
They're
it's
definitely Holly whispering, I think.
yeah, and you know, that's really true, because you know, like, I haven't listened to all of the all of the, or seen everything that has to do with Lord of the Rings, you know, that came out before the films. I haven't heard all of the radio plays, I haven't seen it, but it's all bound to have sound behind it, right? Like the audiobooks, whenever you listen to the audiobooks,
Yep.
the songs are sung. Like the songs are put to, it's either, you know, just, I think it's Nigel Planer who does some of the really good ones. Um you know, like he sings them. And once music is in your head, once music is associated with something, it's very difficult to break that association. So it must, was it a harder job to create music for something where all of these things were pre-existing, and where people had already heard and formed auditory opinions?
I don't know. I think that because they were writing it for the film, and I don't want to spend too long on Lord of the Rings. I just kind of want to talk
Sorry.
about the lessons. No, not at all. But I think that because they were writing it for the films, it's probably easier. So you know, the books become the films in the end, and they were inspired. I can't imagine they were inspired by the landscape they were looking at. I mean, everything about the film is very good. The location's excellent. The music's excellent. So they were writing it for the films, but it just lends itself beautifully to everything. You know, I think it probably wasn't as hard in making out, but yeah, I stand by the fact that I think that Star Wars is the inspiration behind so many of these, you know, these beautiful pieces that are put the way that the cinema is made now. You know, particularly franchising. You know, it's in there for those reasons. Again, I want to point to the fact that Mark was saying at the beginning of this, before we got here, that a lot of it was based around product. Do you want to explain what you meant when you were saying that?
What, in terms of what?
We said Star Wars benefited from like kind of being based around products. You know,
Oh yeah, I mean it was probably the first major movie that had collectible product, toys connected with a film. That hadn't, to my knowledge, that hadn't really happened before. And then suddenly you could collect all of these toys. You could buy posters, you could buy the movie soundtrack, and obviously eventually the VHS videos came out and all that. But there was a lot of product. And I remember there were loads of cheap rip-offs of stuff as well. I mean, I had a lightsaber when I was a kid, which was literally just a plastic tube with a clear cap on the end and a torch on the other end.
I have one of those.
Yeah, cheap as chips and absolutely not authentic.
No, not a bit. But did you do it to the music though when you used it?
Of course you did, and you made the sound effect as well.
Just like Ewan McGregor in the films.
But prior to that, there wasn't really any film that had come out that had that degree of like, here are the things I can collect. This is how I can recreate my vision of what I've seen. The Star Wars world. I can collect the Star Wars world. I can share my Star Wars world with other people in my fandom.
Stories.
Yeah? And that I think was unique up to that point, and has obviously inspired everything now as a toy spin-off. You can buy the figures of whatever sci-fi or fantasy film.
Straight after Star Wars, they brought out Transformers and He-Man, but they brought out the figures and stuff first, and then made comics of the figures. They could sell their whole vehicle of cartoons and comics at that point was to sell figures. Then, because Star Wars had done it the other way around, they were like, "That's successful. Let's make the toys first, and then we'll make crappy cartoons about them, and that will get them into the front room of families, and then kids will see them and they'll want the toys." And so, yeah, that absolutely inspired the concept of that whole business.
And it's how George Lucas made most of his money, I think, off the first film, was he had a big share of all.
Oh, I will look that up for the next time, because I'm pretty certain that the company, the business, would actually got a lot of money out of him, and he was very unhappy with the deal. But undoubtedly made quite a lot out of it. But we are moving towards the end of our hour, so
quick, Stephen, speed us onward towards the end, the conclusion.
Well, I've almost finished the end of section 1. I kid you not. But I've enjoyed the talk, so it's all good. We can move section 2 into next week. But so we've said how it inspired Lord of the Rings, and that was kind of the perfect one. And then I've got a list of other things like Pirates of the Caribbean was a good example of how like that whole thing's got its specific music. I can
hear it.
Yeah, immediately. Yeah. And then the Avengers movies, they've got that whole, like, particularly the ending, no,
it's less all of the Marvel and DC movies. Like, I wouldn't be able to pick their music out of an auditory lineup.
I would, but I mean,
Superman,
it's the ending.
The original Superman.
The original Superman, yeah, but like,
or the Incredible Hulk ending, the sad piano music.
Yeah,
that maybe.
Or the Spider-Man.
Well, yeah, but that's got words in it, hasn't it? That makes it quite obvious who it's about.
Oh, it's got words in it, Mr. Canfield, there, isn't it? Like that Star Wars. It goes
Star Wars.
Look at the Star Wars.
I've got a spaceship. It's really big.
Anyway, and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of music. So I think I've enjoyed the pod talking about music. I don't think we're going to get onto the model of fandom, which is another section in Lego Star Wars. But Mark, you want to? I
was waggling my fingers as excuse me, sir. At the start of this podcast, I said, "Oh, there's one thing that I'd remembered that I was going to wait until you mentioned that subject, and you never got onto it, which was the theme for individual characters." Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We kind of touched on it.
We did a little bit.
And I was trying. Just one thing occurred to me of a character theme which dates way, way, way back is the Godzilla theme. There's a specific theme. I will pronounce his name really badly. His first name's Akira. Ifukubi. Yeah, sorry to everybody who goes, that's not how you say his surname. But that theme is just so iconic. And I watched Godzilla -1, which is fantastic.
It does look very good.
Brilliant. And when that theme finally kicks in, you go, this is Godzilla's theme. So that was just one piece that I wanted to throw in as a theme for a character.
For some reason, and I don't know why, but when you said themes for characters, Godzilla was probably the last thing I thought you were I didn't see Godzilla coming. I thought
how could you not see Godzilla coming? He's huge.
In my head, but he's often also underwater. In my head, for some bizarre reason that I cannot quite fathom, you were going to say the Commedia dell'arte.
As if.
I know. Obviously, the Godzilla theme is from the 80s cartoon, so it's, up from the depths, 40 stories high. That one, yeah?
No.
2 teeth missing and a pink bow tie. Godzilla, that one.
Yes. We live in very different worlds, Stephen.
True enough. Okay, right. So we have talked nonsense for a while. We haven't got into the whole language of fandom and stuff, but we definitely have talked about the vehicle that is music that tells the story of Star Wars and a lot of other films and how important that is to us. I think I was going to ask you, what is your favourite? We can probably squeeze that in there. What is your favourite fandom music? I think obviously Holly's going to say Lord of the Rings, but if you had to pick a favourite, which would it be? You got a favourite piece from Lord of the Rings, something? Hobbits. Concerning Hobbits.
Yep.
Very nice. What about you, Mark? You got a favourite?
I'm trying to think from a fandom favourite piece of music. I suppose it would probably be something like James Bond, just because that piece of music has been with me pretty much through my entire life, and whenever it kicks in, you just go, "Ooh, here we go." So yeah, I'd probably say it's a James Bond theme.
Stephen?
Well, mine's difficult because originally when I wrote this question, I was thinking, is it going to be Star Wars related? Because there's a lot of Star Wars in my life. I've had it since I was a kid, and maybe. But I think in the early 2000s, when Doctor Who came back, and I first heard the theme tune again for the first time in like 30 years, I almost burst into tears. And it's just going to be Doctor Who for me. It kind of picked up a bit with like Matt Smith era and David Tennant. They all had their own theme tunes and stuff, and they were really important to me as well. But yeah, when it first came back, I was like, yeah, probably emotional. So definitely that. I think
made me cry. Stop it immediately.
All right. So on that note, we'll say goodbye. If you've been listening to us talking, thank you very much. We'll be back next week with the last of our Star Wars pods. And then we're going to be away to Fantasy Forest shortly afterwards. So we've got one gap in between next week's Star Wars and Fantasy Forest. So we're going to fill that with our first special guest slot. We'll be announcing that on our social media in the next sort of like 10 days. Although you'll probably be listening to this afterwards. So, we might have to be at Fantasy Forest by the time you listen to this. Who knows? But I'm saying this now because, it's still 2 weeks away for you.
Time
even though
is
we've actually
so
recorded
weird.
it. Yeah, it's weird. And we actually recorded it already. This is a lie.
No, it's not. We haven't. Don't believe him.
This is what I did, whatever.
Deny everything, Baldrick.
No. So that's us. That is us, beautiful people. We look forward to speaking to each other again. Not on the pod, but speaking to you at some point as well. That'd be great. Right, yes, good. Thank you very much. We'll see you all soon. It's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me, it is.
And it's goodbye from me.
I've been waiting to do that all pod.
The power of a very, very warm goodbye. Much love all.
Bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to A Geek Tragedy with me, Plague Mantle, and my best friend, the excellent Holly Properly, and our actually famous guy, Mark Cordory. If you like this, there is plenty more at patreon.com/A Geek Tragedy. Production is by Kit Britnell. Our logo and artwork is by markcordory.com. Music is by Boleslaw Kozielski. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Geek Tragedy. Email us at geektragedypodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe, leave us a rating and a review, and don't forget to tell all your geeky friends. Also, a big shout out to all of our genius geeks. We adore each and every one of you, and of course, much love. Take care of each other.